Former governor of Nebraska and current Senator Pete Ricketts. Sir, thanks for joining us this morning. You're dominating your race. Trump is leading big statewide. Senator Fisher holds a slight lead. Why do you think there's this tight margin for her?
Well, Nebraska has always been a popular state, and her opponent is billing himself as independent and got up on TV early, has run some slick ads. But I think what we need to do is make sure that Republicans come home for Deb Fisher. She's the only conservative Republican in this race. And what people need to know is that Dan Osborne, her opponent, is getting money from the Democrats, people like George Soros, Hollywood, Act Blue. He's for Democrat positions like amnesty for illegals. He wants boys to play girls' sports and be in boys' bathrooms and so forth. So, you know, he's saying that he doesn't know who he's going to caucus with, but he's lying to Nebraskans, because you only get committee assignments if you caucus with somebody. And given that all his money and all his policies are Democrat, we know darn well who he is going to be caucusing with. So we just need to remind Republicans to vote for Deb Fisher, and that the control of the Senate is on the line this year. And that's going to be critical for President Trump as he tries to establish his agenda when he wins.
Yeah, it's extremely important. And so you mentioned Senator Fisher's strategy. What is the strategy for you in this closing stretch?
Well, as I mentioned, Nebraska is a popular state, and so it's a very grassroots retail politics state. I've been out campaigning around the state, doing different briefings, town halls, that sort of thing. We're going to do a fly around on Friday. Of course, the Nebraska game is Saturday, so nobody wants to see you that day. But then we'll be flying around again on Sunday and Monday, doing a barnstorming thing around the state, holding rallies, that sort of thing, to really turn out of the vote and remind people that that we need to take control of the Senate to be able to help President Trump with his agenda next year.
Yeah, absolutely. We just had Senator Roger Marshall on and talking about, obviously, agriculture is important to them, but it's also important to folks in Nebraska. And why don't we compare and contrast the differences if Trump came in office and how he would help folks in Nebraska compared to if Harris wins the race?
Well, I think there's two things that mark this Biden-Harris administration. And it's, first of all, it's high prices and it's an unsecure border. The number of illegal immigrants coming in makes every state a border state. When it comes to agriculture, this Biden-Harris administration has been equally as terrible. I think they're going to be the first administration since Jimmy Carter not to do a major trade deal. About a third of everything we grow and produce in Nebraska from an agricultural standpoint goes overseas and exports. And we've got a $32 billion trade deficit in agriculture here this year. It's a record. It's only the fourth time in 50 years that it's happened. Usually our ag exports are what helps us offset our other trade deficits. I know this is an important issue for President Trump. When he was in office, he negotiated a very important deal with China to sell our ag products. So I actually expect to see a lot of help from this administration. Certainly he had a great ag secretary in Sonny Perdue the first time around. I expect he'll pick somebody good this time around as well.
Yeah, well, it's extremely important, I know, for folks in your state. We know that Joe Biden made comments the other night calling half the country garbage. And yesterday we saw Donald Trump actually campaign driving around in a garbage truck to, play on the insult from the president. What do you make of this scene? And what do you think people in Nebraska think when they heard President Joe Biden call those who support Trump garbage?
Well, it really demonstrates the hypocrisy of Biden and Harris. This is like, as Roger Marshall said, Hillary Clinton's deplorables moment. And it really also highlights that these East Coast elites in Washington, D.C. think they're smarter than everybody else. They think they're better than everybody else. And they think they should be running things. And frankly, Nebraskans and people across the Midwest are just sick and tired of these bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., people like Joe Biden, who think they're better than everybody else, telling us what to do. And I think that this is really going to backfire on them. Again, these aren't people who are floating garbage. These are people who are tired of the high prices and reckless spending of this administration. They're tired of the open borders.
Yeah, not only affecting the presidential race, but those voting, in the House and Senate seats, those Republicans, I'm sure, take that as well. Senator Ricketts, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on this morning.
Great. Thanks very much for having me on.
Of course.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.